Ayubowan. On behalf of the Vishwaniketan International Peace Center, I would like to welcome our distinguished speaker, Dr. Daniel Goleman, to the fifth episode of A String of Pearls, a series of intergenerational dialogues. This series of intergenerational dialogues are organized to felicitate Dr. A.T. Aryaratne as he celebrates his 90th birthday on 5th November 2021, and also to inspire young generations to lead lives for the well-being of all life on earth. Dr. A.T. Aryaratne, the founder of the Sarvodaya Shramadana movement, founded Vishwaniketan in 1999 to help people of all nationalities and ethnicities to cultivate inner and outer peace. Dr. Aryaratne donated the entirety of the prize monies he received from the Gandhi Peace Prize from India and Nivano Peace Prize from Japan towards this noble cause. We are holding this fifth episode under the theme Compassion and Altruism on the Asala Full Moon Day, which signifies a sacred event that sheds light to awaken the hearts and minds of millions of people across millennia. It was on the Asala Full Moon Day about 2610 years ago that the Buddha preached the first discourse, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, after the attainment of the enlightenment. This important discourse comprises the central teachings of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, epitomize the Buddha's sacred message of non-violence. It was on the Asala Full Moon Day the sacred tooth relic was brought to Sri Lanka from India. On a different note, July also reminds us of one of the darkest days in the recent Sri Lankan history, a day which incidents that goes against the path of non-violence preached by the Buddha. This series of catastrophic events triggered a 33-year-long war with rippling effects of mistrust and alienation between the Sinhala and Tamil communities across multiple generations. As we reflect on the significance of this day from these two ancient and recent historical perspectives, we realize the utmost importance of today's dialogue on compassion and altruism. Now I would like to introduce our distinguished speaker for today's episode, Dr. Daniel Goleman. Dr. Goleman is an internationally known psychologist and the author of the New York Times bestseller, Emotional Intelligence, which has sold over 5 million copies and has been translated to 40 languages worldwide. Emotional Intelligence was one of the 25 most influential business management books by Time magazine. The Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, and Accenture Institute for Strategic Change have listed Goleman among the most influential business thinkers. I see Dr. Daniel Goleman as someone who truly appreciates Dr. A.T. Aryaratne's work, and the two of them recently had a very insightful dialogue on compassionate leadership too. Dr. Goleman, it truly is an honor and a privilege to have you here with us today. Finally, I would like to introduce you to Sanara and Tiara. Both Sanara and Tiara have been an integral part of Vishwaniketan's spiritual journey of healing the mind, healing society, and healing the environment from a very young age. They were among the first children to join the 3 years mini spiritual retreat for children developed upon the themes of searching the self, serving society, and saving the environment, founded in 2010. With this introduction, I would like to invite Tiara and Sanara to commence the dialogue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charika, for that lovely introduction. We're so happy to have you here with us today, Dr. Daniel Goleman, especially your willingness to engage with us children. We highly value your work on social and emotional learning. Doctor, I hope you're keeping well.
Yes, fine, thank you. Kind of you to ask. I'm delighted to be here. I'm quite looking forward to our dialogue. Thank you.
That's great, Doctor. We're interested to hear about your take on our today's discussion, compassion and altruism. Yes. Before we move into our discussion, I would like to share a small video clip of Dr. Ari. It was during the month of July that Sri Lanka had to go through extreme communal violence. And during this time of violence and fear, Dr. Ari led by example and practiced compassion through mobilizing so many people all across our island to engage in peace marches. He understood that compassion would lead from village awakening to spiritual awakening. Now, I would like to share this short video clip with all of you. hope you enjoyed that video. Now I would like to invite Dr. Ari to share a brief opening remark on today's discussion.
Thank you, Tiara. I'm so proud to see my old friend, Dr. Daniel Goleman, trying to inspire and educate two grandchildren, who are both of whom are early teenagers. So I'm very, very happy that Vishwaniketan, our International Peace and Meditation Center, has initiated this program under Dr. Charika Marasinghe's leadership. And these two children have got the rare opportunity of conversing, coming into dialogue with great, great human beings in the world like Dr. Daniel Goleman. They know about you, they know about your books, they know about the great biography that you have written about Dalai Lama. So I don't have to describe about you to them, they know very well. I think in the short time available, we want to get your wisdom out through these two children. And I would say that they have chosen compassion and altruism. We know that in Buddha's teachings, 4 sublime abodes: loving kindness, compassionate action, altruistic joy and equanimity, metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, are 4 principles which he says is most essential to awaken our personality so that one day in the cycle of births and deaths, we can put an end to that and attain nirvana or supreme bliss where there is no birth, no death, there is eternal peace. So thank you very much, Dr. Daniel, for joining us. And I allow you to interact with these two children, and we are going to learn from whatever you are going to tell us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. Now I would like to invite Sanara to commence today's dialogue.
So, Doctor, let's jump right into the first question. As we slowly approach adulthood, we would like to hear about your journey of transitioning from emotional intelligence to ecological and social intelligence, and now compassionate leadership. What are your key messages to the children of the present and future adults from your discoveries through this amazing journey?
Thank you for that wonderful question. And I should start by saying that your grandfather, Dr. Ari, is one of my models of a wonderful human being and how to express compassion in action and altruism, our topic today. I started my own journey, the child of college teachers in a small town in California. And I ended up becoming a psychologist and science journalist. And it was in my role as a science journalist at the New York Times that I started to see a critical mass of articles about emotions. And that led me to write the book Emotional Intelligence, because I realized that the way the brain is constructed, we can go in one of 2 directions. We can become more self-focused, more selfish, and that leads to anger and jealousy and fear. Or we could become more altruistic or more compassionate, and more open to the needs of others. And this is a critical point of really a decision in our lives. And Sanara and Tiara, how old are you, and where are you in school?
I'm asking. 17. I'm 17, Doctor. I'm doing my A-level.
I see.
And I'm 16, Doctor.
Okay.
And I would be doing my ordinary level exams this year.
So you haven't gone to university yet?
No, not yet, Doctor.
That comes next. I see. Okay, that helps me understand where you are. So when I wrote Emotional Intelligence, I was thinking of 4 different varieties of being intelligent about emotion. The first is self-awareness, being able to know what we feel, why we feel it, how it's biasing or helping what we're trying to do in the world. And really meditation, I think, is the ultimate expression of self-awareness, being able to be with yourself, to meditate. And no matter what the object of your meditation is, say the breath, it's really the interruptions, the disturbances of that tell us where we are. What is it that keeps intruding as a thought? What feelings keep coming up? That's very important that we know this. And I'm very pleased that both of you seem to be on this path already, having done meditation and started when you're even younger, because I think this gives you a deep grounding in this ability to monitor yourself, to know what's going on in me, because that information helps you with that key decision between, am I going to go in the direction of selfishness, of ego, or the direction of love, compassion, altruism? And of course, it's not one or the other, it's both and. We come and we go from one to the other. The second part of emotional intelligence has to do with how we manage our feelings. Now that we're self-aware and we know what we're feeling, what do we do about it? Can we keep our most disturbing emotions, the most distracting ones, can we keep them from preventing us in going forward toward love and compassion, for example? Can we stay optimistic no matter what happens? I was so moved by the video because when Dr. Ari led those peace marches during the time of horrible strife in Sri Lanka, he was enacting compassion. He was expressing the fact that even in the worst of times, there is a segment of our population and a part of each of us that can find that place of compassion and express it. And that, to me, exemplifies this second part of emotional intelligence, being able to keep your eye on the goal despite your obstacles, being able to see yourself and other people as improving. One of the sad facts of the human psyche is that we judge, we dismiss people for what they seem to be now. But actually, the emotional intelligence encourages what's called the growth mindset, where you see yourself and you see other people as able to grow, improve, and change constantly. And you're at a point in your life where this is really important, because I don't know about in Sri Lanka, but I've got grandchildren of my own that are your age. And one of the things they face is the fact that other kids, other young people, judge and stereotype and dismiss. And that's a negative path. Really, what you want to do is to see people as individuals who can grow in many, many ways. Then the third part and fourth part of emotional intelligence really has to do with what's called social intelligence. And I wrote a book about social intelligence once there was enough brain science for me to find, oh, there's a critical mass here too. Because what scientists discovered is that the brain is designed to link silently, unconsciously, and instantly to the brain of the person you're with. And that means that we form a brain-to-brain bridge that helps us feel what the other person is feeling, know what they're intending, have a smooth interaction with them. It's extremely important. It's the basis of rapport. And one fact that I think is extremely key in understanding how emotions play in creating our reality is that emotions focus our attention. That's the way the brain is designed. If we're upset about something, if we're anxious about something, we'll keep thinking about it over and over. And to some extent, this is helpful. We may come up with a solution, something we can do, then we can stop thinking about it. But sadly, very often we do what's called rumination, where our mind just keeps coming back to the same thing in a loop over and over. We never solve the problem, but our attention is fixated on it. So when it comes to rapport, to that positive interaction, my best self with the best self of the other person, meeting, the first ingredient is full attention. So you two have already begun meditating. One of the scientific facts that we find about meditation is it improves your ability to manage your attention. And so this means that you're more able to connect in this deep way with rapport with other people. And another fact about rapport, it feels good. So when you think about your day, and it was a good day, what made it so good? Probably because you had a good connection with someone you care about. It's your friends, it's, you know, your family, and feeling that rapport that gives you a sense of well-being. So social intelligence involves empathy. And it's important to know that there are three kinds of empathy. One is knowing how the other person thinks. This is very important because it can help you communicate well with them. Dr. Ari, I think, is a master of this, being able to connect with people across divides, because what divides us is how we think about the world. And if you understand the terms people use, you can be better at reaching out to them. The second is emotional empathy, knowing how the other person feels, and our brains do this for us automatically. And then the third is caring about the other person. And this is the seed of altruism and compassion. So that brought me in my personal journey from emotional intelligence to social intelligence. And then I got very involved with a third intelligence, which I called ecological intelligence, which is caring about the planet. And it seemed to me that emotional intelligence is very good for managing ourselves and knowing ourselves. And social intelligence is important for knowing other people, but we need a different intelligence, a larger intelligence, systems intelligence, to understand the factors that are driving, for example, global warming right now. And one of the points that came home to me is the intimate connection between economic activity, business as usual, buying and selling, and the fact that everything we buy and sell damages the environment. But we don't know that. We have no transparency about this. So one of the things I hope your generation will bring about, and the sooner the better, is demanding that companies that sell us things track what the actual impacts on the environment are of the things we buy, so we can make better choices. If we had the information as we were choosing, then we could opt for something better for the environment. So anyway, I've gone on quite a long time, Sanara and Tiara. So please, do you have any questions about what I was saying?
Thank you, Doctor. That was very clear and insightful. And I feel like I could relate to it on a personal level, especially on the ecological intelligence, because I'm a scuba diver. So I've seen the amount of damage and destruction in our ocean bed, and even the recent catastrophic events of the ship. You know, we have so much of plastic pellets being washed up in our beaches and dead carcasses of whales and dolphins. So it really is impactful to our environment. And I think we as youth, now more than ever, it's important for us to actually go out there and spread awareness. So I could definitely relate to you on that, on the ecological intelligence aspect. And moving on to the next question we have today. We're all born with seeds of love, kindness, and compassion embedded within us. But it seems that these positive traits tend to be overpowered by negative and unwholesome traits like jealousy, hatred, and selfishness as many reach adulthood. Why does this happen, Doctor? And how can we stay rooted in our spiritual virtues as we navigate through individual, social, economic, political, and ecological crises and challenges?
This is such an important question. before I speak to this, I want to circle back to something you mentioned, the terrible crisis of that ship off Sri Lanka and the plastic pellets. One of the facts behind that ship is that oil companies, which found that during the pandemic, their sales were going down, decided to make another petrochemical product, plastic pellets. They're called nurdles, the ones you see when you scuba dive off Sri Lanka. And it's very sad that the use of the production of single-use plastics, plastic bags that we use once, say from the store to our home, or plastic cups, or plastic this, plastic that, has increased fantastically, even though plastic never disintegrates. Plastic does not compost. It's an oil product. Oil and water do not mix. So plastic lives forever. So one of the actions that I hope your generation will take is abandoning plastics and opting for alternatives. I'm a fan of a company called Ecovation, where two young students at a tech school in the States found an alternative to styrofoam. Styrofoam, which is used in packaging, is a plastic product. It never dies. It just goes into the environment. It kills fish, it kills animals. It's in us. And they made a styrofoam alternative out of rice husks and mushroom roots, and it's completely compostable. It goes back to nature, and it's just as good as the alternative. I think this is a model for your generation for what can happen in the future. And I think one of the things that will drive that is your generation demanding it and favoring products that are less harmful to the environment. And this gets to the question you asked, a very good question about what happens to us that though we're born as loving infants, we end up as selfish individuals. And this is a question, of course, that the Buddha himself was speaking to. I think all of the great spiritual masters of the world have dealt with this dilemma. What is it that crushes human goodness and replaces it with selfishness, with ego? One of the things that I've noticed, because of my good friend Richard Davidson, who's a neuroscientist at University of Wisconsin, is that there's a transition in American culture. I don't know about Sri Lanka, but there's a transition from young children being very kind or wanting to be kind or wanting people to be kind to them, to starting to be very self-focused, very competitive. And it happens particularly when they start to go to school. In school, we're rewarded for how well we do individually. How did you do on your test? You'll be asked when you go home from school. But what would the world be like if parents instead asked, who was the most kind to you today? In other words, we culturally, and I assume this occurs in Sri Lanka, I don't know, but we tend to focus on individual accomplishment, which reinforces egoism, self-interest. And from that, everything, jealousy, anger, fear, all of that arises. So Davidson and a group at the University of Wisconsin have devised a curriculum for preschoolers about kindness. And it emphasizes being kind, being compassionate, being altruistic to other kids. And in fact, if someone says to the teacher, so-and-so was kind to me today, the kid who was kind gets a little stamp or sticker in a kindness garden. And for a 4-year-old, this is a big deal. It's positive reinforcement of being kind. So I think that what's needed here is for us to re-examine kind of a collective self-awareness of what is it that we're emphasizing? What is it we're reinforcing in our own children and our children in each other? So when you think about, Tiara and Sonara, when you think about other kids and what you praise kids for, is it being compassionate or is it being good at competing? I would say that we need to be sure compassion and altruism and kindness is a theme throughout life, because once you go to school, it's very hard for this to survive. My own granddaughter at age 4 or 5 decided to become a vegetarian. No one in her family is a vegetarian, but she wanted to be kind to animals. She didn't want to hurt animals. And so she's been very strong in that. And we all encourage her in that. But this is an example of the kind of thing that we could be telling our children is something to be proud of.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for those valuable words. I too believe that instead of constantly piling knowledge into children's heads, you should kind of teach them how to be more human, compassionate, and kind. And I feel like especially through Vishwaniketan and always interacting with Sia, Dr. Ari, and Dr. Charika, we are constantly taught on how to be kind and compassionate to every being, regardless of race, religion. And I feel like that should be taught to not only us, but to so many children across the globe and from a very young age, because that's when you initially pick up the steps on what you're going to become. And with that, we'll dive into the third question. At times of crisis, we see both negative and positive human energies that rise to newer heights. For example, while some tend to be selfish and only care about their own survival, so many others show extraordinary levels of compassion and altruism. What advice do you have for all human beings, adults and children alike, as what practices they should adapt to during these crises? What impact does collective consciousness have on the survival of all of us? And can we actually survive alone in the world?
That's such a profound question and so timely, because I think that global warming, more than anything else, has shown humanity as a whole that we're in this together. It's a problem that we can't solve individually. We can only solve as an aggregate, as a collective, as a whole. So what advice can I think of to help us remember that we need to work toward these goals? I feel you're very lucky because you're in Dr. Ari's family. You have grown up within a sphere that values and holds up the importance of compassion and altruism. But let me tell you about an experiment that was done with divinity students at a seminary in Princeton. These were people preparing to be ministers, and they were told they were going to give a practice sermon, and a half of them were given a story from the Christian Bible. It's a story of the Good Samaritan. It's the story about someone who stopped to help a person who was in need by the side of the road while others passed by. Half of the students got that topic to give a sermon on. The other half got random topics from the Bible. And then one by one, they went to another building to give the sermon. And as they went across the courtyard, they passed a man who was bent over and moaning in pain. And the interesting question is, did they stop to help the person in need by the side of the road? More important, did it matter that you were thinking about the Good Samaritan? Actually, what made the difference was how time pressured people felt, not what they were practicing for the sermon. And I think what this says is there's a spectrum of awareness. Remember, I talked about emotion and attention. If you're thinking about, oh, I've got to give this talk, or my to-do list, or my homework, or whatever it is, you're not noticing other people around you. But if you can notice there's another person, and then you can tune in with empathy, that person's in pain, can I help? Then you can take compassionate action. And I think this is a choice we face all through life. And one of the practices that's particularly valuable for remembering to look for the opportunity to be compassionate, which I have to say Dr. Ari has done all his life, but that's very rare. For people ordinarily, I encourage a practice that I call the circle of caring, sometimes called metta in Pali, where you think of someone in your own life that you're very grateful to, who's been kind to you, and you wish them happy, may you be happy and healthy and safe. May you have a life of fulfillment. May you thrive. You send them positive wishes. You do it silently with that person in mind. And then you do it for yourself. May I be safe and happy and healthy and have a life of fulfillment, thrive, whatever positive phrases make sense to you. And then you do it for people you love, your family, your friends. And then for a wider circle, people you know, but they're not necessarily close. And then for everyone everywhere. That practice, it turns out, and this is research that's been done on it, makes people kinder. If you do that in the morning, it sets a tone for you for the day. People are more likely to help someone in need. They're more likely to give to charity. They're more likely to not just focus on themselves, but on other people. And I think that kind of practice is an antidote. I'd love to see it taught to kids. I'm a big advocate of what's called social emotional learning, which are programs that cultivate emotional intelligence, social intelligence, kindness, mindfulness in school. It's now a global movement, although it's very sporadic where this is done. But kids learn, for example, to be kind. They learn to manage their own feelings. They learn to tune into other people and to empathize. And I think these are the lessons that are increasingly important for children around the world.
Thank you, Doctor. I think that simple practice you told us about, how to start off from ourselves, right? To love our own bodies, and in terms of taking in all these chemicals, to be less harsh on our own bodies, then to start being compassionate to our families and our close circle of friends, and thereby multiplying to the wider community out there, and also towards the environment, is a very important practice and extremely timely, I believe, that we as children of today can practice. So I would like to thank you for that valuable advice you gave us. And moving on to the next question we have today. Ever since the current pandemic broke, virtual connections have become the new normal. We often spend hours on end glued onto our devices. In a way, we're able to keep our human relationships. We're thankful for technology like Zoom existing so we can hear and see our loved ones despite the geographical distances. How do you see the impact of this phenomenon on our brain, mind, behavior, and relationships?
This is a really important question because so many of us around the world have been in lockdown where we only see other people, for example, by Zoom rather than in person. But the human brain is designed for person-to-person connection. Through human history and prehistory, we've been together. So this is a very unusual moment, having this virtual connection. One of my big complaints about Zoom and other such teleconference formats, which we all now are dependent on, is that the camera is in the wrong place. In person to person, we'd have direct eye contact and we'd be able to, in fact, the brain wants eye contact. That's where you have the strongest brain-to-brain link. But the way my Zoom is set up, I either can look in the camera or look at your face. They're in two different places on the screen. So actually it's technologically impossible to have eye contact. However, that means only that we need to increase our attention and awareness of the other person. I think we can pretty much overcome that. However, remember that the brain wants in-person connection. That's the way it's designed in the architecture. So there's a degradation as you go from a teleconference like Zoom to a phone call. Voice is not bad, it carries a lot of emotional messaging. But then when you go to text only, to email or texting, it's disastrous. And the reason is this, that the brain assumes that all of the emotional messaging that we send face to face accompanies the text, but it doesn't. It stays with us. What this means is that the other person gets the words only. This leads to a lot of misunderstanding. It's very easy for someone who gets words only to misinterpret the real message in a way they would not misinterpret if they were face to face, because they'd see the facial expression, they'd hear the tone of voice. But this leads to a kind of a disastrous event that occurs only in text and email, where a person will misinterpret what the other person said and have what I call an emotional hijack, where they get taken over by the worst emotions, they're triggered, and then they furiously send a message back, hit send, and then they regret it. Oh, why did I say that? Why did I do that? And that creates what's called flaming or flame wars, where two people have increasingly angry connection online. So that's a big danger today. And I think that reaching out to other people in a friendly way, maintaining connection, whether it's by Zoom or phone, or if you can, in person, is more and more important, because it's an antidote to this sad new normal where I don't know about you, Tiara and Sonara, but I have a granddaughter about your age. And one of the biggest shocks to her is that she can't hang out with her friends. And that means that she needs to make more effort to keep the connection alive through the lockdown. So I think the bottom line from this new normal is that we have to make more effort to stay connected.
That is very true, Doctor. And what I've been told by my parents is that even while doing online school, every break we get, I always go outside to the garden, just walk around. Even for those 5 minutes, it's so valuable. And also, I believe that in-person connections with whoever you can, if it's your neighbors, your cousins, and now that the lockdown is lifted, we live just 5 minutes away from each other, actually, all of us. So every evening we go to my grandparents' place and all of us are just playing, and that it gives you so much happiness over, communicating over Zoom and WhatsApp or messages.
Wonderful.
You really feel all those emotions. And it was even before the lockdown, even before we were introduced to Zoom, we were always thought about how important it is to feel compassion and loving kindness towards every being throughout, the Vishwaniketan 3-year spiritual retreat program. And I would actually like to share a video of some of our programs that we've done throughout the years. With that, Doctor, I really hope you enjoyed that little clip of what we've been doing throughout the years. Let's dive into our final question for today. And this is also about crisis situation that is looming over today. The COVID-19 pandemic. The next decade is predicted to be the most critical decade for the survival of all life on Earth. What challenges would a compassionate leader have to face in the coming decade? And what qualities should one acquire and nurture to be a future compassionate leader?
You know, I have some mentors on this. One is your grandfather, Dr. Ari, who I admire. I love him as a model of how to be in the world. Another is the Dalai Lama, who is very similar, although not able to take the kind of action that your grandfather has taken. He espouses and encourages people to take action. And I think that his advice is maybe the most relevant. What he says is, think of your own skill set, think of your own position, think of the opportunities that gives you, and then find a way to act for the betterment, for the greater good. And some people call this good work, where you think about, what is it I'm good at? What do I love doing? And what's the most meaningful thing that I can do? And align those three things. And then the Dalai Lama says, act now in whatever way you can. Whatever you can do personally, do it. Even if you won't live to see the fruit of that activity, the fact that you start. I think of Greta, all alone on a wet day in Sweden on a park bench. What she did inspired millions of people to act, and it changed norms in a very important way. Now, particularly in Europe, people are embarrassed to fly on an airplane because a train is ecologically better. These are the kinds of choices that I think your generation will have to make more and more clear to everyone, that our individual acts taken together are what's destroying us. But we can act for the greater good. We can decide what to do, which will help the world and the environment. So I encourage you to find your purpose, your meaning, what you're good at, and apply it in a compassionate way. That's what I hope for the next 10 years and the future of the world. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Goleman. Today's discussion was very insightful. And I believe personally that the next decade is the most crucial decade. And as the future leaders within our country and of the world, it's important that we take compassion into account and be compassionate leaders towards the environment, towards people of our communities. And so the advice you give today is really valuable for all children out there. Now I would like to invite Dr. Ari to share a few closing remarks.
Well, I'm very happy that Dr. Daniel Goleman found time to interact with both of you and teach all of us so many things at this particular time where we are faced with a terrible disaster, the COVID-19. We know that today we are confined to our homes, we can't go about our normal work. Every day, maybe 50, 60 people die, and then thousands are being quarantined. And so in a situation like that, we in the Sarvodaya movement are not idling. We are with a lot of courage, continuing our services all over the country, taking good care of ourselves, but at the same time taking a lot of risks. So all that is done with great compassion and without expectation of any return. In other words, it's an altruistic joy we get by doing this work. Now, Dr. Goleman and myself, all of us are very old now. He's not old, I am very old now. So you children, you should take whatever good things we have contributed by way of thought, word, and deed, and try to build a society, a new world, where people are not divided by anything. No ideologies, no geographical barriers, no economic barriers, no political barriers should divide us. We all should be together as one humanity, one living world, so that we can have compassion and altruistic joy to everybody. So thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much. Please give my love and regards to your Tara and the family members and other friends. Of course, I can't travel now, so I'm most of the time at home. Thank you. Wish you good luck, long, long life, and greater service to humanity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. Now, for the final closing remarks, I would like to invite Dr. Charika.
Thank you very much, Tiara. What an enlightening dialogue between 3 generations of wisdom seekers. On behalf of the Governing Board of Vishwaniketan, the A.T.R.A. Ratna Charitable Trust, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Daniel Goleman for sharing your offering of valuable time, wisdom, and knowledge with us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Ariratna, for your much valued presence and wisdom. Tiara and Sanara, thanks so much for moderating this episode from Inside Out. Last not least, Madhushan, Niven, and Krishna are remembered with much gratitude for all their support and assistance. May all of you be well, happy, and peaceful. Thank you very much.